Juan Pablo Montoya is one of the greatest race car drivers of all time. Throughout his legendary racing career, he has raced in karts, Formula One, ARCA, NASCAR, and some sports car racing. But in this episode, we're going to be going over Juan's IndyCar career only. Before we get to Montoya's return to the sport, let's go back all the way to 1999. In 1999, Juan Pablo Montoya made his kart series debut. He was racing for Chip Ganassi while Alex Zanardi, who won the 1997 and 1998 kart championship for Chip Ganassi, made his return to Formula One for Williams. Montoya will get his first career win at Long Beach and won two more consecutively at Nazareth and Rio. 3 races later, he would win at Cleveland, and from race 14 through race 16, he would win 3 more races at Mid-Ohio, Chicago, and Vancouver. Juan Pablo Montoya would not only win the 1999 Rookie of the Year, but he would also win the 1999 Kart Championship in his rookie year for the first time since 1993 when Nigel Mansell did it after Dario Franchitti ran out of gas at Fontana. In 2000, Montoya would have a championship hangover with 3 wins, 4 podiums, and 7 poles, and finished 9th in points. However, Montoya's highlight of his 2000 season was his first career Indianapolis 500 win and his first career Indy Racing League win. After 2000, Juan Pablo Montoya would move out to Formula One, racing for Williams. In Formula One, Juan Pablo Montoya would have 94 starts. He would win 7 races, including the 2003 Monaco Grand Prix, 13 poles, 30 podiums, and an average finish of 8.3. Montoya would lead not only McLaren but Formula One in general after the 2006 United States Grand Prix at Indianapolis. However, Montoya's final F1 race ended in disaster after it started. In turn 1, Montoya would hit Kimi Räikkönen's rear, his teammate, and a huge crash took place, which caused Nick Heidfeld to flip and tumble. After Montoya was released from McLaren, test driver Pedro de la Rosa would be his replacement until Fernando Alonso and rookie Lewis Hamilton became McLaren teammates in 2007. As for Montoya, Juan Pablo Montoya reunited with Chip Ganassi. Before he would get behind the wheel in a stock car in NASCAR, he would do ARCA. Juan Pablo Montoya would make his stock car series debut at the second Talladega ARCA race. Montoya would be part of a multi-car crash on lap 36. However, he would finish in 3rd. Montoya would also do a race at Iowa for the 2006 ARCA season finale and finish 24th, 42 laps down. Montoya would make 4 Busch Series starts. In 2006 with 11th place at Memphis, 28th at Texas, which he was 3 laps down, 20th at Phoenix, and 14th at Homestead, 1 lap down. Montoya would make his Cup Series debut at Homestead. However, on lap 253, Juan Pablo Montoya suffered a hard and fiery crash. It would finish in 34th. In 2007, Juan Pablo Montoya would win the NASCAR Busch Series race at Mexico, which would be his only win in the series, and he would also get his first career NASCAR Next Cup Series win at Sonoma. For the rest of his NASCAR full-time career, Juan Pablo Montoya would win 1 more Sprint Cup Series race at Watkins Glen in 2010, and even almost got his first career oval NASCAR win at the 2013 Richmond Spring race. But Brian Vickers had issues that brought out a late race caution, made a final pit stop, which costed him 2 spots, and a green and white checkered happened. Montoya was also close to winning the 2013 Dover June race, but a fast, hard-charging Tony Stewart got around him for the win. During the remainder of the 2013 NASCAR Sprint Cup Series season, it was announced that Juan Pablo Montoya signed for Team Penske's IndyCar program 2014, replacing A.J. Allmendinger. Oh, by the way, I made a racing story about A.J. Allmendinger's return to IndyCar back in 2013 featuring Ben Schneider. Feel free to check out that episode, link in the description below. After rumors and speculations that he would race for Furniture Row Racing in 2014, Juan Pablo Montoya visited the Furniture Row Racing shop in Colorado, but his first choice was racing for a winning organization. A month before signing the Team Penske's IndyCar team, Montoya acknowledged that he wouldn't return to Chip's number 42 Cup ride. Montoya made his final race at Homestead, which I attended to. Montoya finished 18th in his final full season race at Homestead. Montoya would also make 2 more Cup starts at the first Michigan race in 2014 and also the 2014 Brickyard 400 for Team Penske. And just like that, his NASCAR career was over. In 255 Cup starts, he won 2 races, 24 top 5s, 59 top 10s, and an average finish of 19.8. A solid career for a driver like Juan Pablo Montoya. But too bad NASCAR fans choose to remember his NASCAR career over his 2012 Daytona 500 jet fire accident when his car broke coming to turn 3 and spun to a jet dryer. But he had a solid NASCAR career. Now, for the main story, his IndyCar return, I will give the mic to my good friend, who's a Juan Pablo Montoya fan in IndyCar, NASCAR Nick, 1999. Take it away.
For the first time since 2000, Juan Pablo Montoya sat down in an IndyCar cockpit for a full-day test at Sebring in Will Power's car, while Power ran 10 laps to set up the car before Montoya took over. Montoya ran a total of 20 laps, the fastest of which was less than half a second off of Power's top time. Montoya was in disbelief and excited that not only was he testing Rogers' IndyCar program and seeing his name on the car, but he's also excited to return to the sport for so long after a decade. Montoya continued to do some testing in the afternoon and the next day, continuing to get more comfortable in the car, eventually passing Power's fast time before the first day of testing came to an end. On the final day of testing, Montoya did some landmark testing. Montoya would continue to do more testing at Sonoma on December 16, 2013, completing 50 sets through 3 sets of tires and practicing pit stops. He also tested at Phoenix on December 10, 2013, and Auto Club on December 11, 2013, and would test at Sebring once again in mid-January of 2014, alongside Will Power, once again, and would test alongside Helio Castroneves. Montoya would also do another test at Auto Club Speedway in February of 2014, and another test at Barber in March of 2014. On February 10, 2014, it was announced that Verizon would sponsor Juan Pablo Montoya for 8 races. On February 19, 2014, it was announced that Hawk Performance would sponsor Juan Montoya for 3 races at the Toronto doubleheader in Mid-Ohio. PPG would also sponsor Montoya for 4 races at Barber, Pocono, Iowa, and Milwaukee. After months of testing, preparations, and sponsorship deals, Juan Pablo Montoya was ready for his IndyCar return. During the first 4 races in the 2014 season, Juan would finish in 15th at St. Petersburg.
By the way, when I was at the race and I saw Montoya getting driven during pre-race, I remember yelling, "Welcome back, Juan." He did notice me. I know he's not the best with fans, but it is cool to happen. Anyway, carry on, Nick.
A 4th at Long Beach after barely escaping the big one and getting out unscathed. 21st at the wet and rainy Barber race after spinning and going off track in turn 11 on lap 27. A 16th place finish at the inaugural Indianapolis Grand Prix after a restart crash and stack up on lap 52 involving Graham Rahal. An up and down start with a top 5 finish in the first 4 races for Montoya, but for someone who has not been driving an IndyCar in almost a decade and a half, he's doing a solid job and progress was there. Speaking of which, Montoya would return to the Indianapolis 500 for the first time since his win back in 2000 and would finish in 5th. In the duel at Detroit at Belle Isle, he would finish in 12th in the first race and 13th in the second race. It had been an up and down first half of the season for Montoya's IndyCar return, but in the second half of the season, things would get better. At Texas, Montoya would finish in 3rd, a 2nd at the first Houston Grand Prix race to rookie and fellow Colombian Carlos Huertas. It was a Colombian 1-2-3 at Houston, and in the second race, he finished 7th. A great weekend for the Houston doubleheader for Montoya. The next race was the Pocono 500. Before the race, Montoya set a new qualifying record of 223.92 miles per hour, a time of 40.2017, and would win the pole for the Pocono IndyCar 500. Montoya was one of the 3 drivers who dominated alongside Will Power and Tony Kanaan. However, with 34 laps to go, Will Power was blocking Juan Montoya for the lead on the front stretch. Coming into turn 1, while they were about to exit the front stretch, a little bit of contact was made, and a little piece flew out. However, Montoya would take the lead. Will Power would get penalized for blocking his teammate. Montoya would hold on to the lead for 21 laps until Joseph Newgarden would take the lead. Newgarden would hold on to the lead for 7 laps until Tony Kanaan would take the lead. 2 laps later, Montoya would take the lead back. For the next 4 laps, he would have to hold on to first place.
He's got a lot of experience here, Townsend. He's raced here many times in NASCAR. He's qualified on the pole in NASCAR and Cup. So this is obviously a great track for him as the crowd is going crazy for Montoya as he hits the white flag.
That's right. The Brazilians might have beaten us in the World Cup, but we're about to get some of that back right here.
What a sweet feeling this is, guys. Out front, nice gap to second place with a beautifully handling Penske IndyCar coming to the line for victory at Pocono.
And he said that was the reason he came to the captain's team. Who would turn down an opportunity to drive race-winning cars? It'll be his 15th career IndyCar victory, but his first since the year 2000. Juan Montoya it is, winning here at Pocono. and the first pole sitter to win this year, breaking that jinx on the top qualifiers. "14 years between victories while he raced in Formula One and NASCAR. With distinction, well-deserved indeed. Juan Pablo Montoya is your winner."
For the first time in 14 years since Gateway, Juan Pablo Montoya would return to victory lane in an IndyCar race at the Pocono 500. This race was historical because it was the third fastest IndyCar race in history, and the first 500 mile to reach an average speed of 200 miles per hour with the average speed of 202.402 miles per hour, beating the previous record of 197.995 miles per hour from the 500 in 2002 at Fontana, which was won by Jimmy Vasser.
After winning at Pocono, Montoya would have some struggles for the next 3 races. In Iowa, Montoya would be involved in a crash with Ed Carpenter on lap 282 and would finish in 16th. In the Toronto doubleheader, Montoya would finish in 18th in the first Toronto race, and at the second race, on lap 12, Montoya would crash into the tire barriers in turn 3, and Michael Oloshin would have a bad turn 3 due to how wet it was and crash right into Montoya and would go right underneath him. Montoya would finish in 19th. Luckily for Hawk Performance in their final race sponsoring Montoya for 2014, Montoya would finish in 11th at Mid-Ohio. For the next 3 races, Montoya would have 3 straight top 5 finishes, a 2nd at Milwaukee, a 5th at Sonoma, and a 4th place finish at Fontana for the season finale. For 2014, Montoya's stats say 1 win, 4 podiums, 1 pole, and an average finish of 10.7, and would finish 4th in points. For someone who has returned to IndyCar for the first time since 2000, he had his ups and downs, but honestly, he drove like he never left the sport to begin with. Don't believe me? Let's turn the page to 2015. Coming into 2015, Montoya was expected to not only win races or win the Indianapolis 500, but to compete for the championship. In 2014, Will Power and Elio Castroneves, his teammates, were title contenders against Simon Pagenaud, who was now with Team Penske in 2015. Will Power would win his first title the previous season, while Montoya was 4th in points, so it was expected for Montoya to be a title contender. Fortunately, he started off 2015 strong. In the first race at St. Petersburg, Montoya started 4th in a Penske 1-2-3-4. In the race, it was the Will Power and Juan Pablo Montoya show. Will Power would lead 75 laps. However, with 11 to go, coming into turn 10 on Dan Weldon Way, Will Power would send it on the inside of Montoya, and contact was made. Power would lose a piece of his right front wing and would have to hold on to second. Montoya would lead 27 laps and would win at St. Petersburg, a dramatic way to start the 2015 Verizon IndyCar Series season. At NOLA, Montoya would lead 31 laps at the bipolar, wet weather, chaotic race, but would finish in 5th. For the next 3 races, Montoya would finish in 3rd at Long Beach, 14th at Barber after breaking 2 wings, and the 3rd at the Indy Grand Prix. For the first 5 races of the 2015 season, Montoya had a lead in the points throughout the entire season, coming into the 99th running of the greatest spectacle in racing, the Indianapolis 500. Montoya started in 15th. Before the first restart of the race, Simona Di Silvestro was about to go to the outside of Montoya and make contact with him. Montoya would have a right wing damage and would have to get the wing replaced. He would continue the race and would show up. Throughout the race, Montoya led the race twice for 4 laps. However, due to having a clean car, a fast car, and a good recovery, he finally became a factor late in the race, going against Will Power and Scott Dixon. Ian, you better look away, because I will show you the closing laps of the 2015 Indianapolis 500.
The white flag is waiting at the yard of bricks. And we enter the final lap of the Indianapolis 500. Kimball has caught up to Power. 1 lap to go. Who's going to win it? Power slipped in turn 2. Justin Wilson just came off the pit lane. He and Munoz had to stop for fuel. Final 2 corners for Montoya. He was all the way back in 30th place after an opening laps crash. Here they come to the checkered flag. And the winner of the Indianapolis 500 is Juan Pablo Montoya.
Great job, Juan. Guys, you're awesome. Unbelievable.
Why must we revisit this finish? Whatever. At least he won the Indy 500 back in 2018, so there's that.
After suffering some damage, avoiding trouble, showing up at the right time, and avoiding Justin Wilson, Juan Pablo Montoya would win his second Indianapolis 500. And let me tell you, I became a racing fan back in 2011. The first ever race I watched was the 2011 Daytona 500. The first time I ever saw or even heard the name Juan Pablo Montoya was when he made that amazing save when he spun off of turn 4 in the 500, and I immediately became a fan of that driver. I know it sounds pretty crazy to become a fan of a driver just because of a save he made, but I dove a little into research of who Montoya was, and I saw he was an amazing racer. I instantly became a fan, and when I found out he was going back to IndyCar in 2014, I knew I had a favorite driver to root for. And then when the 2015 500 came around, I was watching that race in my bedroom on TV. And when that final lap came, let me tell you, my heart was pounding because Will Power was closing on Montoya. But Montoya, he was keeping that car straight. He was staying in the perfect line. I knew he was going to hold on. And when they came off of 4, I screamed, I yelled, I cheered. I was happy to see my favorite IndyCar driver win the biggest race of all. After winning the 500, Juan would have a 25-point lead over Will Power in the point standings as they came to the second half of the season. The next 2 races were the duel at Detroit at Belle Isle, and it was a wet weekend. In the first race, Montoya would finish in 10th, and coming into the second race, Montoya had an 11-point lead ahead of teammate Will Power. Montoya would finish in 10th once again. However, he would extend his point lead by 21 points when his Penske teammates Will Power and Helio Castroneves crashed each other out on lap 64 in turn 2. For the next 4 races, Juan Montoya would finish 4th in Texas, 7th at Toronto, 4th at Fontana, and 4th at Milwaukee. For those 4 races, Montoya has been consistent. Meanwhile, Will Power would have some inconsistencies and bad results. Power was the pole sitter at Texas, but he would finish in 13th. 4th at Toronto, which would be his only best result of those 4 races. He would finish 19th after crashing out alongside with Takuma Sato on lap 241 and would finish in 22nd after being involved in the crash with Brian Briscoe on lap 131. Power would drop 2nd to 5th in points in 4 races, and after Milwaukee, Scott Dixon would be in 2nd while Montoya had a big lead in points by 54 ahead of Dixon. However, in the next race, Iowa, Montoya's streak of clean finishes ended.
Tight outside move. We got a yellow. We got a car on the wall, and I think it's Montoya.
It is. The championship leader is out.
Oh,
Juan Pablo Montoya, who has had almost the perfect season to date, finally has something go wrong.
Oh, wow. Suspension broke, and he's got to hustle out of there. There's a decent little oil fire there on the right-hand side. Interesting.
this changes everything from now with 4 races to go.
And a double points paying race at the end. People remarked on his consistency. Not necessarily luck, just the amazing run that JPM had this year. Perhaps it's the law of averages. Something had to happen at some time, and it has for the Indy 500 winner in a big style.
That his suspension broke, and we're watching top corner of your screen. Yeah.
The car just took off straight, almost like you would see a NASCAR cut a tire down. He was right in the center of the corner, and the car just went straight on him.
And you can see the sparks.
Yeah, you can see the sparks. It's on the ground. Something broke. Montoya telling what happened. That's devastating.
And that was right at the exit of turn 2. We're on board with Hunter Ray. Let's watch ahead.
That is a hard hit.
I wonder if the bump in between 1 and 2 might have been the tipping point for whatever failure that he had, because that's, a lot of vertical load as the car settles through there.
2 years in a row, his only 2 appearances at Iowa Speedway have both ended in the same fashion. That is, in the wall and out of the race.
On lap 9, Montoya had broken a piece of suspension in turns 1 and 2, and hit the outside wall. However, this was not any championship implications for him because he still had the point lead, but would lose 12 points. He had a 42-point lead over his new challenger, MAV TV 500 winner, Graham Rahal. At Mid-Ohio, Montoya's point lead was now down to 9 points since Graham Rahal got his second win of the season at his home track. Not only was Rahal closing in, but Scott Dixon was also closing into the championship battle by 34 points behind Montoya. At Pocono, Montoya, who won the year before, would not have to worry about his point lead because championships were implicated for Graham Rahal on lap 93. Going into turn 3, Tristan Vautier attempted to make a 3-wide move but would make contact with Rahal, and Rahal would crash out. Rahal was not happy with Vautier after the accident since he was going for the championship. Montoya would avoid troubles at the tricky triangle and would finish in third.
Coming into Sonoma for the season finale, 6 drivers would fight for the championship. Juan Pablo Montoya was having his best seasons in IndyCar since his championship season in 1999. Juan Pablo Montoya would be going against Graham Rahal, Scott Dixon. Pay close attention on the Dixon part, by the way. Will Power, Elio Castroneves, and Joseph Newgarden. 85 laps to decide a champion.
Montoya would qualify in 5th, while his teammates and one of his title rivals, Will Power, started on the pole. If Montoya wanted to win the title, Montoya's scenarios were to finish 3rd and Graham Rahal winning, finish 6th if Scott Dixon wins, 8th if Will Power wins, 17th if Elio Castroneves wins, and 21st if Joseph Newgarden won the race. The race was underway, and he went up to 4th place by the time they entered the first corner. The first caution would come out for Luca Filippi on lap 33 for being slow. At the time of yellow, Montoya was 17 points ahead of Will Power. During the first restart, there were championship implications.
Look at Graham Rahal, rodeo ride. I think he passed 1, maybe 2 cars around the outside.
Looked at this on the start. It looked like Montoya got into the back of somebody at the hairpin and hit somebody. So I don't know if Montoya got some damage to his front wing, but these guys are swarming all over James Jakes.
It wasn't Rahal. Oh boy.
It's Power. That's Will Power.
Power's off.
Keep it running, bud. Keep it running.
Something broken on the car laying in the middle of the track. So he's got a broken front wing.
Looks like he might have had a little help there from behind, losing it on the exit like that.
Yeah, that's the problem. When you get back in these lapped cars, slower cars, you get impatient. You want to get by them, and he might have got caught out and touched wheels with somebody and spun it around.
On board with Juan Pablo Montoya. Don't tell me the teammates collide. Surely not. Oh, they do.
What did I tell you?
Oh,
it looked
boy.
like he had damage to that bumper and got tagged and spun around.
Well, I think Montoya didn't know what Power was going to do there, so he sort of left the door open with Filippi there, then just came across the bow.
The two is, I think it might have damaged Montoya's front wing as well, because a piece of the wing flew off here, as you see right here. Boom! See the front wing? Broke the front wing, so that's a problem for Montoya as well.
It's all of a sudden gotten very interesting.
Teammates, championship contenders collide. Look up ahead. The view from Graham Rahal's car. Bang!
So that was actually Newgarden ahead with Power behind. They both sort of outbraked themselves and slid wide of the apex. Montoya, as you would expect, just went for it.
Life is pain, life is pain, life is pain. Why? God, it's always Will Power getting screwed over by someone.
I'm not sure what you're complaining about. Will Power did not want to hit Newgarden, so he went up high and went down while Montoya was there and took himself out. Besides, Power had 2 championships. Anyway, on lap 39, Will Power and Montoya would collide in turn 5, and Will Power went down on Montoya and spun himself. After the contact, Montoya would have to go to pit road to get front wing replacement. After the collision with Power, Montoya would have a clean race and try to keep it clean till the end. On the final restart, Montoya would be in 8th place while Dixon was leading and Rahal was in 6th. Montoya had to be at 5th or better to win the championship if Scott Dixon won the race. However, with 9 laps to go, championships were implicated once again. However, it was what Montoya needed.
Rahal, that defensive inside line. Bourdais thinks about it. Oh! And hits it!
That'll help.
Oh my goodness!
Don't let Sato get by Montoya. So that could be 2 positions. There has to be damage on Bourdais' front wing.
And that could move Montoya to 6, one position
And a
from the
full course,
championship.
and a full course yellow as well.
Looking closely at Bourdais' wing. No full course yellow. Will Bourdais get a penalty?
We might get a drive-through.
Yeah, that's clearly an avoidable contact because he was a whole car length back, outside, inside, and then squared him up.
Oh, yeah. I think we're going to see a penalty. I
no
think
way
Montoya
that can't be a penalty.
Montoya moved to 6th.
And if Montoya finishes 6th, we've heard from race control that's under review. They're looking at it as we speak. If Montoya gets to 6th, it still won't be enough because Dixon will win on a count back of victories. They'll be in a tiebreaker situation.
Tell you what, Montoya was lucky that Graham stayed on the brake and didn't roll back into him.
I don't know
further.
I don't know if Graham stayed on the brake at all. He was rolling. He was looking at Montoya coming by. Wow, look at that. 2 points.
They run.
After the collision, Juan Pablo Montoya was 2 points behind Scott Dixon. 7 laps ago, Sebastian Bourdais went off track. 6 laps ago, Bourdais went off track at the same corner once again. Juan Pablo Montoya would finally get around Sebastian Bourdais and he was finally tied. Montoya needed one more spot to advance, so he would be ahead of Scott Dixon for the championship. For the remainder 5 laps of the season, Juan Pablo Montoya would push and push and push to get close to Ryan Briscoe, but it would be too late.
Montoya seems to be a little closer to Briscoe. And if you're just turning on, he needs to pass that gold and black car ahead to make sure of this championship. However, that task is getting increasingly harder. One more lap left for Scott Dixon and Chip Ganassi. Do you think there's a pretty good reason why he's Ganassi's longest tenured driver? 14 years driving for Chip. Montoya can see Briscoe, but he just can't get to him.
Oh, but he's getting close. Long lap to do for Briscoe to hang on to those red tires. They must be shagged.
He's really got 2 opportunities into the hairpin and into the last corner. He's nowhere near close enough now to even put the bumper to Briscoe, so he's got to get closer.
I'm watching them come out of the carousel. There goes Kanaan. There goes Briscoe. Montoya.
Closer.
Oh, he's going to be close.
He's close. Closing in, getting even closer, so it's going to be the last corner where this happens.
The team will be telling Juan Pablo Montoya, this is it. Give it everything you've got. Go and get that Schmidt-Peterson Honda, and the championship's yours. But time is running out. Scott Dixon into that final corner, and that checkered flag will be waiting.
One last brake zone, and it's going to be next to impossible.
Dixon gets back-to-back wins at Sonoma, but we can't give this championship to him just yet. We wait for the rest to come across the line, and Montoya cannot do it. Scott Dixon not only wins in Sonoma, but wins the 2015 championship.
We win on the tiebreak.
Incredible performance. Winning on a tiebreak. There's Emma, Scott's wife. She can't believe it. Oh, beautiful scenes inside the Ganassi camp, and there's extra emotion here as well. Scott's wife Emma is English. Scott driving for Justin Wilson, just like everybody else.
On a tiebreaker from Lewis wins. Thank you, man. Thank you, guys. Thank you so much for everything.
Remember when I said pay close attention to Scott Dixon? Well, Montoya should have won the championship in 2015 since he had 2 wins, 5 podiums, and an average finish of 6.9. And Scott Dixon had 3 wins, 4 podiums, and an average finish of 7.1. So why did Scott Dixon win the 2015 championship and not Montoya? Back in December of 2014, IndyCar announced that the Indy 500 and Sonoma would award double points. Granted, Dixon won the title because he won the tiebreaker. But what caused the tiebreaker was the double point system. IndyCar's double points was controversial since it was first introduced. Montoya was critical about the double points, after the award claiming it does not matter what the number 2 team did all year. Montoya also said that Dixon had a crap season and one good race and paid the penalty, and says the system is not fair for a normal championship. If it wasn't for the double point system, Montoya would have won the championship by 22 points ahead of Scott Dixon. He hoped that IndyCar would reconsider the system. Luckily, coming into the 2023 season, IndyCar ditched the double point system for the Indianapolis 500. Double points were gone for the season before 2023, besides the 500, due to the higher car counts and how it negatively affected the sport. Therefore, double points are still no more as I'm making this video.
Hey, it could be a lot worse. At least they're not like NASCAR and the Lucas Oil late model dirt series with the elimination chase and Super Motocross with their own chase. And unfortunately, NHRA has the chase as well called a countdown, but it's not the elimination format, thankfully, but still. Double points, still not good, but it could have been a lot worse. Either way, thankfully it's gone. Anyway, despite Montoya not winning a championship, Montoya still had an amazing season. He was strong and consistent with 2 wins, one of them being the Indy 500. But with the double point system, it was just enough. Thankfully, the double point is no more. Now, it was on to 2016.
Montoya was looking for a redemption in 2016 by taking back what was supposed to be his in 2015. For the first 5 races of 2016, things did look that way. Montoya would lead 44 laps and would win at St. Petersburg for the 2nd year in a row. But that would be the only time Montoya would be the point leader. He would finish 9th at Phoenix after leading 56 laps, 4th at Long Beach, an amazing race at Barber with a 5th place finish after starting in last place in 21st, and an 8th place finish at the Indy Grand Prix. Unfortunately, his streak of top 5s and top 10s would run out at the 2016 Indy 500. On lap 63, Montoya would crash out in turn 2, finishing in 33rd, last place. After the race, Montoya would drop from 3rd in points to 10th in points. In the duel at Detroit, Montoya would finish in 3rd for the first race, but would unfortunately crash out of the 2nd race on lap 34 in turn 10 and would finish in 20th. At Road America, Montoya would finish in 7th. Unfortunately, for the next 2 races, Montoya would have 2 races of 20th. At Iowa, Montoya's engine blew on lap 179, and at Toronto, Montoya would be in a battle against Ryan Hunter-Reay and Charlie Kimball. While battling those two, Montoya would lock up in turn 5 and crash into Jack Hawksworth after Hawksworth was in the barriers moments ago. Luckily, for the remainder of the 5 races of the 2016 season, Montoya would have no DNFs. Montoya would finish in 11th at Mid-Ohio despite leading 9 laps, an 8th place finish at Pocono, 9th at Texas, and 13th at Watkins Glen, despite being involved in the 3-car spin, alongside with Michael Oloshin and Sebastian Bourdais, and a 3rd place finish to end off his tough 2016 season. His stats in 2016 look like this: 1 win, 3 poles, and an average finish of 10.9, and would finish in 8th in the points. For 2017, Montoya would not return to the 2-car full-time. Joseph Newgarden would take over the ride. Newgarden had previously driven the number 21 for Ed Carpenter Racing in 2016. Montoya spoke to Chip Ganassi, Ed Carpenter, Andretti Autosport, and even AJ Foyt Enterprises to look for a ride. However, agreements were not reached. Luckily, Montoya would reunite with Penske for 2 races in 2017 for the month of May. Montoya would finish in 12th at the Indy Grand Prix and 6th at the 2017 Indy 500. And just like that, his stint with the captain was over. But for IndyCar, after 2017, Montoya would join Team Penske's IMSA prototype team in 2018. Even though Montoya is mainly a sports car driver nowadays, that did not mean he was not talking to IndyCar race teams for the Indy 500. In 2018, he talked to Schmidt-Peterson Motorsports and McLaren in 2019, but he could not do so because he was under contract with Penske. After 2020, he was out of a contract with Penske. In 2021 and 2022, Montoya would race for Arrow McLaren for the Indy Grand Prix and the Indy 500. In 2021, Juan would finish 21st at the Indy Grand Prix and 9th at the Indy 500. In his last 2 IndyCar starts for 2022, he would crash late in the race at the Wet n Wild Indy Grand Prix, finishing in 24th, and an 11th place finish at the Indy 500. As of this video, Montoya has not returned to the month of May or anything IndyCar related, as he continues to focus on sports car racing, especially trying to win the Triple Crown of Motorsports, which includes the 24 Hours of Le Mans, and focusing on his son Sebastian Montoya's racing career as well. Will we see Montoya run some more IndyCar races? Let's see. I'd like to thank Ian for having me on for this episode. Go Montoya. Now, back to you, Ian.
Thank you, Nick. If y'all want to see and hear more from Nick, don't forget to subscribe to Nick's YouTube channel and social media accounts. Links in the description below. Juan Pablo Montoya returning to IndyCar was honestly fascinating. A flashback to his early IndyCar days back in 1999 through 2000, and he just had it in him. He was not only a contender for race wins, he was also an Indy 500 champion once again and a championship contender. Since his return, he won 4 races, 12 podiums, and 1 pole. So that's going to do it for another video. I just want to say thank you guys so much for watching. And again, Nick, thank you so much for joining this episode. I know it took a while, but hey, here we are, man. Video's finally uploaded. Thank you so much for being featured. And I will see you guys next time. Goodbye, everybody.